Well, hello again, folks out there in Facebook land. This is the Bobby Bowen Show, and this is our eighth episode. I can't believe I've already done eight. Well, I haven't already done eight. I'm working on number eight. And this is my first female guest. And who else could I choose but the first lady in my life? My beautiful wife of 26 plus years now. This is my wife, Becky Troyer Bowen. Becky, I know you're in the next room from me.
Yeah.
It's not like we're in two different states or two different cities in Tennessee, or we're just feet apart, a few feet apart from each other. But I wanted to keep it this format because I've been doing everybody else this way. So we're just basically talking about a little history, go back into time, you can tell everybody where you were born. You can tell everybody when if you want to, unless you don't want them to know how old you are. But they probably would never guess. But anyway, just tell us how you kind of got started in music and what were your influences, and we'll just kind of work our way up through life until you made the second best decision in your life. That was marrying me. First would be to give your life to Jesus, that's for sure. But let's just kind of go back from there and just say whatever you want to say and just keep it clean because this is a family show, okay?
Alrighty. First, I want to say that the one thing that we did have to do was get all the kids out of the house and send them to the park and to the fast food drive-through to just get them out of here. And speaking of which, I'm going to just quick hit send because I sent them a text and said we were getting started right now.
So don't come home yet.
Don't come home yet. But, and also I want to say I'm real proud of you for doing this. At first I thought, what is he doing? And just, yeah.
I didn't know what it was going to turn out to be either. I was just, but I've really enjoyed it myself, getting to know.
Yeah, and the people that you're interviewing are enjoying it, I think. And it's cool to hear these stories. I haven't heard them all yet, but I lay in bed, I get ready for bed and I have my phone on. That's when I listen to these interviews. And when then I finally go to bed and it's still playing and then I'll fall asleep and then I have to finish it the next morning. But
yeah. Are you trying to say that the other guys were boring?
They're just boring me to sleep. No, just no, I'm tired and it's late. But
yeah.
So, well, I was born in Sturgis, Michigan, and to Harry and Josie Troyer, and I grew up in a little bitty town called Burr Oak, Michigan. And I mean, it was off the beaten path. It was off of the highway. No highway went through it. It's just a little bitty town. I graduated with 22 or 23 people. So wow. Tiny place.
And of course you were the valedictorian, right?
I was not.
Ooh.
But that kind of, I grew up singing with my sisters. I graduated fourth in my class.
Okay.
But I sang with my two sisters. I have three sisters, but I sang with two of them growing up. And then when I was 16, I started singing with my aunt and uncles and a couple other band members, and we traveled regionally and had a great time until I was 21. And then in I did go to junior college. A scholarship to the local junior college landed in my lap, and I didn't want to go on to school, but when that happened, I thought, how can I not go to school if it's free? Mm-hmm. So while I was in college there, I started working part-time for a lady named Mary Boyer, and elderly lady, took care of her in her home on the weekends. And every summer, one of her three daughters and her daughter's husband came to visit her from Tulsa. And so I met Ed and now I can't think of her name, but Ed and his wife sitting in Mary's kitchen one Saturday afternoon.
It was her son-in-law.
Yes.
The lady you were taking care of.
Yes. And he just kind of asked me questions about what I was doing with my life, you know, and told him. And I said, I really want to go to Anderson. I want to go on to college. Now that I've had a taste of it, I'd like to continue because I think I love the music business. But I didn't feel like I had the vocal ability to be a great singer, but I knew that I could be a part of the music business on the business end. And I was really interested in engineering. I loved the studio, loved it. And we had recorded, my sisters and I, and then my uncles and aunt had recorded, and I just loved that atmosphere. And so he listened to me talk about what I wanted to do, didn't say anything. And then that, just within a few months, a couple from our church, Ed and Martha Wickie, gave my sisters and I $500 and said, we would like you, this is a third of what you're going to need for the three of you to go to Stamps Baxter School of Music. We really think that you girls would benefit going there and you'd enjoy it.
And that was in Nashville.
And that was held in Nashville. And it's a 2-week school. It's just a week of, there's theory, there's all the group singing. It's a lot of fun. And you're surrounded by people with the same interests in music. And it is more focused on Southern gospel music. But then my sisters and I started getting invitations to sing after that. We'd never had that before. We just sang in our church, mostly, a couple, just here and there. But we started getting invitations to sing, and they gave us offerings. And we had never received offerings before, but we knew that God was saying, I want you to go to Stamps Baxter. So we raised our money easily, and the three of us sat in the front seat of my 1978 Pontiac Phoenix and hit the road to Nashville.
How old were you then?
I was 21.
21, and what were the other sisters' ages?
Kathy was 20, and Mary would have been 17.
17, wow. 3 girls like that heading out. What did your dad say about that?
My parents were probably nervous
I'm
all
sure.
day till we got there, but we arrived and
that was like a 500-mile trip, right? Something like that. Yeah, man.
Yeah. But they also are parents that, they trusted God and trusted God with their kids. So we made it. And we went through a week of school. And when the weekend came, there was no Stamps Baxter classes. Everybody was still there on campus. This was at Belmont, by the way. Everybody was there on campus, but it was free time. And we thought, we're going to sleep in for Sunday morning. We aren't going to church. I don't know what I was thinking.
Well, I mean, a lot of times when you're traveling, you don't go to church because it's not your home church a lot of times.
I just kind of thought I was big stuff to just sleep in on Sunday, though, I guess. But not that I hated church. I love church.
Right.
But we decided we were going to go to the Opry on Saturday night. I had been 3 years earlier when I was a senior in high school, but we decided we're going to go to the Opry. Well, I had talked to my friends, the people I sang with back home, and they were saying, okay, now when you get to, we didn't have GPS, of course.
Yeah.
When you get to the Briley Parkway exit, just remember, don't take the first exit, take the second exit, and it'll loop you around. And I said, okay, got it. So I'm driving. Mary, who's 17 and never paid attention to where we were going, didn't know where we were. we take the first exit. And I knew I wasn't supposed to. And she said, what are you doing? You're not supposed to take this exit. You're supposed to take the next exit. I said, I know. Just kind of like I was in a stupor. I said, I know. And I continued on Briley the wrong way. And I went about a mile, turned around, went back, and this is the country girl come to the city. I wasn't thinking. I got back on 40 East thinking that I was going to go find that second Briley exit. Well, I needed to just stay on Briley at that point. But that's what I did. I got back, but it's all part of the plan, right? I got back on 40, and I come to the people that know Nashville. They can see exactly where I'm talking about. I got in front of the dam, just past.
Hey, I said keep it clean. Okay.
Sorry. And we got a flat tire. And so we get out of the car. Cars are whizzing by. We all stood on the other side of the car and just looked at the flat with our hands on our hips, just going, what do we do now? And we stood there just a few seconds, and a little gray Nissan pickup pulls up and over and backs up to us. And the man said, there was a man and his wife and a teenage boy in the truck. And the man said, you ladies need help? And we said, well, we have a flat tire. To make a long story short, this was Jim and Phyllis Cupid and their son, Jace, and they helped us get another tire, which I had the money to get another tire, but they bought a tire for us, and she visited with us while the guys helped get the tire back on, and they led us to a place where we got all this done. She visited with us, invited us to her church the next morning, and was just so loving and sweet. And so she said, she called it Two Rivers Baptist Church. And I thought, well, that sounds like a little country church somewhere outside of town.
Yeah.
Well, we continued, went to the Opry that night, had a good evening. The next morning we went to Two Rivers Baptist Church, and there were TV cameras and TV lights, and the place was packed, and it was huge. And we thought, oh, well, it's not the little church we thought it was going to be. And this is not my story, but just to give a little glimpse of how God works, we watched a skit at that church that morning. It was 3 people, 2 guys and a girl, called Images Creative Group. And they belonged to that church. Little did my sister know that she was going to replace that girl in that group just a few years later. But that's another story. So the Cupid family took us to lunch. Before we left church that morning, they said, we want you to meet our music minister. And so we met him, and he said, oh, it's great to meet you. He said, you sing? That's wonderful. He said, would you like to come back tonight and sing a song for us? And Phyllis told us later that they never do that. They don't they didn't know us.
Right.
And she said, this is awesome. They took us to lunch. So not only did we go to church that morning when we hadn't planned on it, we went Sunday night too.
Yeah. And
we went back and sang our song, and continued with another week of Stamps Baxter, and then went home.
And I was actually there at Stamps Baxter playing. We did one night. Was that the same year?
No.
Or it was a different year? Okay. So I'm getting ahead of you.
Yeah. So
of course, I always do. You always have to correct me and make sure I get the right dates right.
Yeah, I got the dates right here.
It's a guy thing. We can't remember dates about things. So go ahead.
Okay, so went back home, and my parents had a little mom and pop ice cream pizza shop in Burr Oak. And so I was working, and it was Ed Cobb's, the son-in-law of the lady that I worked for on the weekend.
Now, Ed was, he was from Tulsa. He was a businessman. He was into oil. Yeah.
Yeah, wealthy guy.
Yeah.
He stopped in to the mom and pop, the pizza place, and he said, I was surprised to see him. He'd never been there. And he said, well, I just stopped in today. I was thinking about you and your college plans and what you wanted to do, and I wanted to see if you're going to college. Well, the spring before, this is 1989, my dad took me down to Anderson University in Anderson, Indiana, to enroll. And I was set to go for the fall. So I was planning to go to school at Anderson. I had one semester paid for, and that's all I was going to work my way through school.
You weren't going to take out a student loan or anything like that. You're just going to work your way through it.
Well, I applied for grants, but
yeah.
So I said, well, thank you, Ed. I was totally shocked. I didn't know that was going to be what he said. He said, well, good. I'm glad you've got things going on. So have a nice day. He left. When he left, I thought, okay. And I got to back up real quick to say, while I was at Stamps Baxter, the guy that directed the school, Tom Powell, he was from the Spear family. He sat and visited with my sisters one day at lunch. And he asked us questions, what we wanted to do. And I told him I wanted to be in the music business, maybe wanted to get into engineering. I didn't know. He said, if you want to get into the music business, you need to come here to Belmont. And I said, well, I'm registered at Anderson. So it's another music school for sure, Gaithers and all that, but I'm registered there, and that's what the plans are. And he just looked at me and said, if you want to get into music business, you need to go to Belmont. And I didn't say any more. He shut me up. And so when Ed offered that about school, as soon as he left, I thought, I wonder if he'd help me go to Belmont. So I called my mom, who said, call your dad, who said, the worst that can happen is he can say no. So I called Ed the next morning. He was getting ready to go back to Tulsa. And I said, I wondered if you'd help me go to Belmont. He said, yeah, can you send me a catalog for the school? And how much do you think you're going to need to live on when you get there? I wasn't prepared for that question, and I was 21 and still at home. I said, $200? He said, I'll send you a check for $1,000 certified mail to the address that you give me when you know where you're. So a flat tire.
Going the wrong exit.
I knew how to go. I knew how to do it, but I did it wrong twice. Took the wrong exit and then got back on the interstate past the exit. And just the timing of everything, the flat tire and the Cupids, if I'd not gone that mile the wrong way on Briley, we'd have waited a while. Or, just the timing was just perfect.
Yeah.
And we're friends with the Cupids today. Yeah. We just had dinner with them. Well, it's been.
You actually, when you first came down to go to school at Belmont, you lived with them for what, 6 months, something like that?
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Okay.
Yeah. So I started making plans to leave home, and the dorms were full. So I had to find other housing. So I called the Cupids, and they said, well, you're going to live with us if the dorms are full. I said, I was hoping you'd say that because just till I can get on my feet.
Yeah.
And then I found a roommate. I lived in Bellevue of all things at first, and then moved closer to, I guess I moved to 2131 where you and I ended up for a while, but yeah, that's the start that's how I got here.
Yeah. I mean,
school.
It's amazing how we always think, if you take a wrong exit or, I'm messing up, but God, I've talked to several people doing these interviews, and they've told me how they were planning on doing a certain thing and it ended up, being something different. And if they hadn't have done that, then they wouldn't be where they're at today. And that's the same with you. If you hadn't taken that wrong exit, things would be totally different for you today.
Totally different. So graduated from Belmont in '92 and have a 4-year degree in the music business degree with an emphasis in business, and worked for I interned at Star Song, and then I worked for Capitol Nashville for a while, and then from there somebody knew somebody who worked for Billy Dean, and so I went over to Billy Dean's office, his personal business office, and worked there for a while. And
We'll have to back up just a little bit because I'd mentioned earlier that I was at Belmont. I was at Stamps Baxter with Mid-South Boys at the time. And
yeah,
we actually did a evening concert for the school.
this
But
was
that would have been
the year
80,
after, so it would have been 90.
okay, 1990. So, and you and some friends came in and
I don't remember being with anybody, but I stopped in to as an alumni, to
yeah,
say, to see what was going on and see if I knew anybody in the school.
mhm.
And the downstairs auditorium was, you could feel the billows of heat coming
Oh,
out of packed.
that
People were,
teenage smell in a hot
it
place.
was packed
It
and
was
hot.
packed out.
The back doors of the auditorium were open, and I'm trying to lean in and see anything.
Mhm.
Good music coming out of there. Just, yeah, I couldn't get very close. So
So that was
I,
your first encounter with Mid-South Boys, and I was there singing lead and playing bass, but I didn't really catch your eye that you would remember me.
no, I didn't. But actually, I heard of you 5 years before that, because my uncles and aunt that I sang with, we were in Pennsylvania singing, and Chet, the promoter, we got in his Suburban to go have lunch or something. They were always taking us places. And he said, "Hey, you've got to hear this group." He said, he put the tape in, and I said in the back seat, "Oh, I like them. They're country, but with Christian words."
Hmm.
It was really the beginning of that. I
Yeah.
hadn't heard much of that before, and I liked it. And so, yeah, that was the first time I heard you, was 1985.
Then we were at Stamps Baxter, and you kind of poked your head in to see what was going on. You heard us, but you really didn't.
I
You
knew who you
remembered
were.
that it was the same group that you'd heard in Pennsylvania
Yeah.
cassette tape, but you didn't stick around long enough to come talk to anybody or meet any of us. So uh, let's fast forward. You were working for Billy Dean,
Hmm.
and
And this is kind of interesting. I think I've told you this before, but Daniel, can't think of his last name, but he worked for Paul Overstreet.
right.
And we were on the phone one day, and he said, "Becky, are you married, or are you wanting to get married?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I want to get married." And he said, "Well, can I just pray for you?" And I said, "Sure." So he prayed for me over the phone that I would uh, meet my husband. And then that was, I don't know when it was, but it wasn't long before when Steve was hired as Billy's bus
Bus
driver.
driver.
And I had not even met him, but somehow I knew somehow that this was either going to be my husband or that this was going to lead to my husband. I knew it. Isn't that weird?
Till you saw him, and you're like, surely it's not going to be my husband. No, I'm kidding. Hope
No,
Steve's not watching this.
no. But he became a friend.
Yeah,
We talked
great
on the phone.
friend.
I did the itinerary for their travels. They booked the hotels and rented the cars or the vans or whatever, and load in stuff like that, and put it in a booklet and sent it with them on the road back in the day.
Yeah.
But Steve and I were on the phone one time, because he would call in his mileage and all this, whatever bus drivers have to turn in. And he said, "You would like my roommate." I said, "Who's your roommate?" He said, "His name is Bobby Bowen. He plays bass and sings lead for Mid-South." And I said, "Oh, I know who that is. I know the band, and I know who you're talking about." And so I said, well, I guess that was all there was. And then I went to a Billy Dean concert, followed me and some friends, followed the bus down to Chattanooga one night, and just for the fun of it. Sat on the bus later and with Steve, and I said, well, I'm ready to meet your roommate, I guess. And he said, well, give me your phone number. Oh, is that what you're waiting on? So I gave my phone number, and then you called me on a Monday night and asked me out for the following Friday. But
we got to back up a little bit because we sang
almost,
at Belmont.
That's right.
One night, and you came, and this was before we met.
Well, yeah, it was right before Steve said you'd like my roommate.
Right.
It was like March.
So we sang at Belmont on a Tuesday night or something like that. And you came, you and a friend came. And again, after the concert, you didn't hang around very long. I think you said you talked to Robbie at the CD table, maybe just a little bit. And then you left. Mm-hmm. And it was like right after that was when Steve said, you know, my roommate, you got to hook up with my roommate. But you didn't say, well, I just saw them at Belmont, you know. It was like that you forgot all about the concert. Well, you didn't forget about it because you told me something later about it that kind of hurt my feelings a little bit, but no, it didn't really. But you want to tell everybody what you said at that concert? Now, I didn't learn this till later on after we were married. She finally confessed her sins and told me what she had said, what she thought when she was at that concert that night. Kent Humphrey had just come with us. He'd been with us maybe a year. We had just finished a new project, new CD with Kent singing. We were sharing leads. I was singing more than he was then. I think he sang maybe 3 or 4 songs on the CD, and I sang the rest of them. So we were kind of showcasing the new CD, the new music at Belmont that night in a concert. And so now you take it from there and tell them what you thought after the concert, or during the concert, actually.
Well, first of all, oh no, sorry. My sister had your cassettes. And I walked into her bedroom one day. She was playing City Lights. I picked up I'm going to make enemies from this, Bobby, but I picked up your cassette and I said, I just listened for a little bit. And then I said, you know, I think they'd do better if they got a different lead singer.
Wow.
And so, hold it together. And so, then when I was my sister Mary joined me in Nashville, and we had another roommate, and the TV was on, CMT was on the TV, and I heard a song that made me go into the living room and look at the TV and see who that was. And I saw that it was Mid-South. It was We'll Go to the Well.
No. We did Down by the Tabernacle.
The one in Colorado, the video in Colorado.
You were at the end of every road. Yeah.
End of every road.
We're riding horses. And
it was that one. And I saw that and I thought, see, what did I say? A different lead singer, and now they're on CMT. See what I'm talking about? I know what I'm talking about. And then I was working for Billy, met Steve.
You came to the concert at Belmont.
And you sang the first 3 songs, and they were great. But I thought, I wish he'd shut up and let that other guy sing.
Talking about Kent.
Talking about Kent. Oh, well. Sorry.
Yeah.
Now I think you're the best singer in the world.
Well, you have to say that now. We're married.
Well, I really feel that way.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
But
so when I got your number,
we almost met twice, though.
I know. We came real close.
We almost met twice. You came with Steve to the office one day, but stayed in the car.
Mm-hmm.
And then another time there was a CMT Fan Awards or something like that
at the Opry House, yeah.
And I was waiting backstage for Steve to get there with paperwork, numbers again, to take to work the next day and turn in. And as soon as he got there, I left. But when he saw that I was there, he went back to the car to tell you, because you were out in the car. You went to tell.
Either I was out in the car, or I was in there with him, but I was just kind of standing off to the side somewhere.
He saw that I was, since he knew I was there, he went to get you.
Yeah.
And I was gone.
Yeah.
And so, and then we finally met on a blind date.
Yeah.
Because Steve gave you my number. So we had this.
I tell everybody when we travel and I introduce her that we met on a blind date, and after they've seen both of us, they can see who the blind person was, right?
Yeah, you do say that. But we met on a blind date on April 30th. Now that's going to be that's the date everybody's, that's the last day of stay at home.
Well, hopefully. Hope so.
Yeah. But April 30th, we talked a lot, had a great time. After the date, I leaned my head, I closed the door on you. Oh, I didn't tell how I met you. Do you want to tell that one?
Yeah, I can tell it because it happened to me, and it really threw me for a loop. I had not seen her before, and we got to back way up to childhood because you didn't tell everybody that your mom and dad were raised Amish.
Oh, well, yeah.
They were raised Amish, and then when they, I think either before they got married, they started going to the Mennonite church. And so Becky, when she was a kid, up into her early teenage years, they still went to a Mennonite church, and she had to wear I call it a coffee filter. She had to wear the coffee filter on her head. And so when Steve was the bus driver for Billy Dean, she said that. And Steve and I lived together back then. He used to drive from Mid-South before he went with Billy Dean. And so we lived together, and he told me about her. And I said, well, what does she look like? He said, I don't know. She's a girl. And I said, well, tell me something. I mean, this is a blind date. I don't want to go out with some fat, ugly girl, So he said, well, only thing I know about her is that her mom and dad were raised Amish, and she was raised Mennonite. The first thing I thought was coffee filter, And so being a blind date, I was really nervous about it. But at the same time, I was kind of excited because I thought, well, she's working for Billy Dean. Surely she's, she doesn't wear the coffee filters working for Billy Dean. I didn't know. So, and I also thought if she's working for this country star, Billy was pretty hot then. He had some #1 songs, and he was touring, making pretty good money. And I thought, if she's working for Billy, she's got to be driving a nice car. And back then, I had an '87 Cutlass Supreme. It was a pretty car, but it wasn't no BMW or anything like that, which I thought she probably drove. So all that day, I'm excited. I washed it. I waxed it. I cleaned the inside. I had cologne sprayed all inside of it, trying to make it smell good. And so I got my shower. I got ready, and I walked outside, and it had a flat tire. And I was like, my roommate Steve had just bought a new Lincoln Town Car. It was a huge car. And I said, Steve, I got a flat. Can I borrow your car for this date? And he said, yeah. He threw me the keys, and I got it in it. And I thought, at least this is a new, nice car. And I'll pick her up in this, and maybe this will, be a little better. So I drive up to her apartment where she lived. And I'm looking around the parking lot, and I see this brand new green Mustang. And I thought, that's got to be her car right there. That's got to be it. So I walk up the sidewalk around to the door, and I find the room number, and they had just a regular screen door somebody had put up on the door. So y'all could open the door, and there would be a
feel
screen,
like we're in the country.
so the flies wouldn't come in, So
yeah.
The door was open. It was just a screen. So I knocked on the screen, and I heard this voice say, who is it? Way back in the back. And I said, it's your date. And so eventually you came to the door, and she looked at me, and she had this real puzzled look on her face. And she looked at me, she said, uh, I'm sorry, who are you looking for? And I said, Becky Troyer. And she looked at me, she said, I'm sorry, you got the wrong apartment. And I was looking at the door, the number on the door, and I thought, she told me it was, and she said, I'm just kidding, I'm Becky, come on in. So kind of broke the ice. And so, yeah,
Fun.
we had a great time. We found out we had a lot in common musically and everything. We knew a lot of the same people, and just really hit it off. And like, she was talking about when I finally took her home, and she walked in the door after I left. I hugged her. I didn't kiss her. I just hugged her and gave her that southern, pat on the back. When you hug somebody, I did that, and I walked away and left her. And I thought to myself, you know what? I think this is the one right here. And
And
so
I
I was
leaned on the
almost,
side of the door and I said, I think this might be the one.
and I was almost 30 years old. So I was like, man, you need to do something here. And I think this is it. God, is this the one? So you kind of take it from there.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing, that this might be the one. I was 25. So we had a second date, and you always say you got a little too comfortable and said some things, road stories and stuff that I just wasn't ready for. And so after that date, I leaned against the door after I locked you out and said, this is definitely not the one.
Yeah.
And then I had a friend that she lived in the apartment complex, and we would walk after work a lot of days, and we're walking. She's asking me about you, and I told her, first date good, second date, and she said, just in her counsel, and she's a godly girl. I'm friends with her still today.
Yeah.
She said her overall counsel was, give it a third try. So I went out a third time with you, and it was a good date.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. It was. And 2 months later, I think. Less
2.5
than 2 months,
months later, yeah.
I proposed, and she accepted. And 6 months later, we got married. And we got married on January the 8th, which is Elvis Presley's birthday. And that really helps me remember. No, I would never forget it. And speaking of that, you can see behind me, let me lean down. That's our wedding. And that was at Cornerstone Church. And since then, that building has been torn down, and they got a whole new gigantic building there now. Pastor Maury Davis married us, and you'll see her two sisters up there on stage with her, Mary and Christy. And that's Steve standing. Let's see if I can point right. Steve is right, that guy right there. That's the one we're talking about that kind of got us together.
I don't really see his face, but
yeah, barely see his face. But yeah, we got married, and we talked about having children, and but we thought let's spend some time, because I was still on the road, and let's spend some time together, some quality time together before we start thinking about having children. Now, like I said, I was already 30 years old, and she was almost 26 at that time. So you don't want to wait too long, but we waited almost 5 years. We had our first, which is Grace, and she's 21 years old now. And that was quite the ordeal, expecting your first child, and you're excited, and you're thinking about taking that bundle of joy home. And this, we found out it was a girl, and it was just exciting. And then there were complications, of course, leading up to the birth. And you want to talk about some of that?
Yeah, everything was fine up until there was a what do you call it? Induction. And we listened. I guess I'll just go ahead and say it. knew God was telling me, don't go in for that induction. So I called my doctor the morning of, and I said, I feel like I'm not supposed to come in for this. Well, he couldn't believe what I was saying. First time mom, ready to pop. I mean, just ready to have this baby. And I'm calling him saying, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
It just makes sense. But I knew that I wasn't supposed to. And he said, okay, but if she doesn't come by Friday, which was 2 days later, come back in. And I said, okay, just knowing that God would take care of that I would have her. Well, she didn't come. And so I did what he said instead of continuing to listen to the Holy Spirit. And went in at midnight Friday night. The different things that the procedures, the protocol, but my body didn't react to those things very nicely. Yeah. And so we almost lost Grace. Mm-hmm. And today, Grace, a lot of people know Grace. She's in a wheelchair and she's nonverbal. Beautiful girl, beautiful woman. But things are a lot different. And I have wondered over and over if I had listened, if I had continued to listen and obeyed. But you can't blame yourself. You can't live like that.
No.
We make mistakes, but God, he takes our mistakes, like wrong turns on the interstate, and he takes our mistakes and he does something with them. He works on our behalf, and he's all about us and making things good for us. You know what I mean? I don't mean he's all about us, but he wants to take care of us. He loves us.
And since then, we've had 4 more kids.
Yeah. So the rest of them, we decided to have them at home because we didn't want to go through the whole induction and the different interfering things we felt like. And so we did that easy. I mean, I enjoy, after Landis, our second one, was born, he was 6 months old. And I told Bobby, I don't know if I can wait another 2 years to have another one. That was awesome.
Yeah. And the last one, Justis, which just turned 9 recently, he was, the other ones were kind of planned. We decided, let's try to do 2 years apart. They were close to that. But after number 4, Faith, we had pretty much decided that, we were going to have 4, and that was going to probably be it. But obviously the Lord had other plans. And here I am, 47 years old. And I'm not going to say how old you were, but, 40. Here we are at 47 years old, and we're having another baby, and I'm grandpa age. I should be having grandchildren at 47, close to it.
Yeah.
But we had Justis, and that was a whole nother story about that. When Becky thought, she didn't think she was pregnant, for one thing. She had taken a couple of tests, and they showed negative. But her stomach, she had this knot in her stomach that kept growing. And her mother had passed away back in 2001 of cancer, colon cancer. And so Becky's first thought was, well, maybe it's a tumor, So I said, well, she came to me one night and was concerned. And I said, well, the only way you're going to know what it is to go get it checked out. So she scheduled an ultrasound. And so you went to a doctor, and you took Landis with you.
I just want to say this real quick, though. When I was dealing with those thoughts about a tumor, we got stranded on a Sunday morning down in Mississippi on our way to a church. Yeah. And we couldn't make the Sunday morning date. So we're in this hotel that we broke down right in front of a Holiday Inn. Yeah. We're in this hotel room, and my mind is just being attacked with these fears, these darts of fear. And so I got everybody's breakfast and settled in front of a TV, and I locked myself in the bathroom with my Bible, and I had to go in and out of that bathroom all day long until I got a grip on, till that was dealt with. But I did that. What is it? 2 Corinthians 10:5, something like that, that bringing every thought captive, casting down arguments and imaginations. And I just had to deal, and God wanted me to experience that. He wanted to bring me through that, to be stronger through it. Yeah. Then you said, get an ultrasound.
Yeah.
Words of wisdom. So I take Landis, who's 10 years old. He said, no, why are we going to this? And I said, oh, I'm just nothing to worry about. I'm just going to get some things checked out. I had him wait out another room, and I'm prepared for being told, what this is. So I'm laying there, and I decide I'm not going to look. And then I decide, yeah, I am going to look. I'm going to look at fear in the face. And I turned and I looked, and I saw, the little round head. And I'm looking at it, not knowing what I'm looking at, knowing but not believing it.
Yeah.
And he said, well, your stomach is growing because you have a baby in there. And he said, would you like to know what the baby is? And he didn't wait for an answer, because I guess I wasn't speaking. I was just too shocked. And he said, it's a boy, and you're 17 and a half weeks along.
That's what, halfway through? Is that what, halfway through?
Just about.
Yeah.
And so I would have been bigger than I was if I had been eating normally, but I was being very careful what I ate, because I thought it was cancer. And I was taking communion in the kitchen every morning, and just listening to healing sermons, and just, doing what I knew that I should do. Then when I found out I was pregnant, I started eating again.
Yeah. Well, you're eating for two. That's what they say,
So then when we found out we were pregnant, you had already lined up a long trip out west. We knew I wasn't going, because his due date falled in the middle of that trip.
Yeah.
So as the dates approached and my due date, I was walking twice a day. I was trying to stay away from food that was not going to I wanted him to come early. He was due March the 13th, I believe. And so he didn't come. Well, you canceled your first booking on that tour, but then after that you said, I've got to go.
Yeah.
So I had tears. It was raining. It was sad, because I knew that I would have Justis while y'all were gone. But I would set my laptop by the bed every night and get it propped up and ready for Skyping, because I knew that I would probably wake up with pains. Every morning I would wake up and nothing had happened. And
did you did you say what I said before we left, as we were leaving?
When you left the driveway that morning, we're hugging, and you said, he'll wait till I get back. And I looked at you like, yeah, all of our children, all of our babies had been born on their due date or earlier.
Yeah.
Most earlier. So I just knew Justis was going to come early. And the neat thing too, I could go into other stories, but the Lord's timing in every one of their births was just amazing. And it got more incredible as each child came. Mm-hmm. But this one took the cake. So here it is, the 13th, the due date, and he's not arrived. And my midwife started to get a little nervous, because my blood pressure was going up a little more each time. So on the 21st of March, it was a Monday, and you and the kids were in Amarillo, Texas. You had to drive home that night. You were driving home the
all day.
Trip.
Yeah.
You said that you stopped to fuel up and grab packaged food and keep going. You kept the pedal to the metal.
Yeah.
And my midwife came that morning, and she took my blood pressure, and I said, better? And she said, no. She said, I want you to eat 6 to 8 eggs today. I want you to take an Epsom salt bath, and I'm going to leave my bag here because you're having a baby tonight. He's waiting for his daddy to come home. So that's what I did. And I was tempted to look up preeclampsia, to look up my, see, but I thought if I do that, then I'll be dwelling on my symptoms, and it's just invoke fear. So I did what she said. I had 6 to 8 eggs that day. I took an Epsom salt bath. I was fine. My neighbor said, "How can you be so calm?" I said, "Because I know he's coming tonight." You pulled in the driveway at 9:45. 2 hours later, I had a contraction. We called my midwife. She came. She knew she'd be there that night.
Yeah.
And he arrived at about between 2 and 3 o'clock, I think.
Yeah, it was pretty fast after I got home. Yeah.
Yeah, we woke the kids. Everybody had to wake back up, and they were exhausted.
Yeah, I'd driven 1,000 miles, just straight as fast as I could to get home, and I mean, God's timing is always perfect, and I believe Justis. They say babies can hear voices while they're in the womb, And I believe he heard my voice when I got home and said, "Okay, Daddy's home. I'm coming out."
Yeah, God ultimately brought him when he wanted to bring him. But yeah.
So we got this family music ministry going. This is our 12th year of doing that, and God's blessed it, and we thank him so much for it. And I think we're about to run out of time, so we're going to have to wrap this up. And thank you, my beautiful Becky Bowen, for sharing with everybody. I mean, sometimes you have to get a little personal sometimes and share, but it's good because it just shows you how God is in control. And if we just let him take care of things and not try to do things on our own, it always falls into perfect place.
That's right.
So thank you so much. We'll do this again sometime, and we can talk about some more stuff if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Because we got a whole lot more stories to tell. We got some road stories that,
oh my goodness.
I've got road stories from Mid-South, many, many, many road stories. And, but we got a lot since we've been traveling as a family too. So we'll get back on here someday and talk about stuff like that. Thanks a lot. Very much. Appreciate it. And say bye to the folks out there. And
thank you for having me, and bye. Thank you for listening. I hope it blesses.
It definitely will bless people. It blesses me every time I hear it again. I know the stories, and every time I hear them, I'm thinking, what an amazing God we have. He orders our steps. So, after this video is over with, or, during the video, please share this on your timeline, and maybe this will bless somebody that's going through things that need to hear this kind of word, these kind of stories. So thank you so much again, and I'll see you in just a few minutes.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.